The wind howled through the pine trees, carrying the scent of fresh snow and wet bark across the quiet mountain town of Maple Ridge. It was a place where people knew each other by name, where winters were long, and where hearts often grew cold in silence. Eleanor Hart, a young widow of 28, sat on the porch of her small cabin, clutching a letter in trembling hands. Her husband had died in a logging accident 3 years ago, leaving her with a little boy, Tommy, age 6, and a heart full of memories she couldn't bear to revisit. The letter was from the town council, informing her that the Child Welfare Board was conducting inspections. They'd noticed Tommy's absences from school and concerns about the lack of a stable father figure. In other words, they were threatening to take her son away. That night, after tucking Tommy into bed, Eleanor stared into the fire, tears streaming down her face. "What am I going to do?" she whispered into the flames. A knock at the door startled her. It was Hank Lawson, the lumberjack who lived at the edge of town, a quiet man who worked from dawn till dusk and spoke to no one unless he had to. His beard was thick, his eyes weary but kind. "Even in, ma'am," he said softly, holding out a small package. "Tommy left his lunch pail at the mill, thought I'd bring it back." Eleanor thanked him, trying to hide the tears. But Hank wasn't the kind to ignore pain. He glanced past her into the dim cabin, saw the bare cupboards, the flickering fire, the look of exhaustion on her face. "You all right?" he asked quietly. That was all it took. The dam broke. She told him everything, the letter, the threat, the fear that she might lose the only family she had left. Hank listened silently, his large hands resting on the brim of his hat. When she finished, she looked at him with desperate eyes and whispered, "Mr. Lawson, would you pretend to be my son's father? Just until the inspection is over." The room went still. Outside, the snow fell heavier. Hank stared at her for a long moment. "You're asking a lot, ma'am." "I know," she said, her voice cracking. "But you're the only man Tommy trusts. You help him with his toy truck sometimes at the store. You remind him of his father." Hank's jaw tightened. He hadn't spoken about his own past in years, a past full of regret, a son he'd lost to illness, a wife who couldn't bear the pain and left. Maybe that was why he worked alone in the woods now, trying to cut down the noise in his head with the swing of an axe. He looked at Eleanor, then at the small boots by the fireplace. "All right," he said quietly, "I'll do it." The next day, when the inspector arrived, Hank played the role perfectly. He sat at the table, reading to Tommy, even helping him fix a broken toy truck. He spoke kindly but firmly, the way a father should. Eleanor watched in awe as Tommy's face lit up. It wasn't an act, it was something real, something warm that filled the cabin for the first time in years. After the inspection, the officer nodded approvingly. "You're lucky, Mrs. Hart," he said. "A fine family you have here." When he left, Eleanor turned to Hank, tears in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." But Hank just shrugged, rubbing his rough hands together. "You don't need to. Boy deserves someone who looks at him like that." Days turned into weeks. Hank started stopping by more often, chopping wood for them, fixing the roof, teaching Tommy how to fish in the frozen stream. What began as a favor turned into a quiet routine that none of them wanted to end. One night, while watching Tommy sleep, Eleanor whispered, "You don't have to keep pretending, you know." Hank smiled faintly. "Maybe I ain't pretending anymore." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" He looked at her, eyes glistening in the firelight. "I lost my boy years ago. Never thought I'd feel that again, the sound of small boots running. Someone calling me Pa, but that little fella brought it all back." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "And me." He took a deep breath. "You remind me what home feels like." The silence between them was soft and full. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, the fire burned strong. Months later, the town held its annual spring festival. Eleanor and Hank stood together, watching Tommy run across the field, laughing. Neighbors smiled, whispering about how good they looked together, the widow and the lumberjack. As the first fireworks lit up the night sky, Tommy ran back and tugged at Hank's hand. "Dad," he said shyly, "can we get ice cream?" Hank froze. The word hit him like thunder, not in pain but in joy. He looked at Alina and she nodded through tears. "Sure, son," Hank said softly, his voice breaking. "Let's get some ice cream." That night, as they walked home hand in hand, the boy between them, Alina knew that fate had sent her not just a savior, but a family. And somewhere in the whisper of the pines, it felt as if even the forest was saying, sometimes love doesn't need to be found. It just needs to be welcomed.